Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I'm your host, Adam Cook. This week on the show, my feature interview is with the MLA for Richmond, Trevor Boudreau. I'll speak to him about the recently concluded fall sitting of the Nova Scotia legislature, the first legislature session in which Boudreau served as a member of Premier Tim Houston's provincial cabinet. But we begin the show this week with a trip to a local nursing home, although it's not just any nursing home visit. On the first Friday afternoon of December, residents and staff at the Port Hawkesbury Nursing Home learned that there's going to be a new nursing home coming to the town in the coming years. You're going to hear some comments from some of the provincial and municipal officials that were on hand for the announcement, as well as officials with McLeod Cares, a division of the McLeod Group, which oversees the Port Hawkesbury Nursing Home and several similar facilities around the province. Let's kick things off with opening remarks from the Chief Operating Officer of McLeod Cares, Kathy Partridge.
I'm sure everyone is anxious to hear why we are gathered here today.
I just want to say the good news today is that Port Hawkesbury is getting a new nursing home.
Wow.
Everyone will have their own private room with a washroom, and there will be rooms for 42 more people. This new facility will have private rooms for 96 people. Privacy, space, dignity. Those living and working in the home will enjoy a facility that is bright, fresh, and spacious. The Chisholm wing of the existing facility here is more modern, built about 10 years ago. But the other two wings, let's just say that residents and their families and those who care for them, I think a more modern facility is what they would like and what they need. It takes time to build a nursing home, and for many years, none were built in this province. New nursing homes are being built all over the province right now. And for that reason, this home is still a few years away, but I will be doing my part to see that it comes here as soon as it can. McLeod Cares, who is the provincial government's partner, and it's nice to see Ramsey Duff, of course, with us today here, has the experience and the capacity to move quickly. And I have confidence in their ability to complete design work and move through the construction phase efficiently. May we all take a moment to thank the caregivers of the Port Hawkesbury Nursing Home. Every day you show love for the residents you care for. So much nursing home care comes down to people. Staffing is critical. Our government made a decision to fund more staff. We're moving to a new standard of 4.1 hours of care for each resident every day. This means every resident gets 4.1 hours of care. To support that level of care, we need more CCAs, more LPNs, and more RNs. And our government has done a number of things to try to help increase the number of caregivers. CCAs can now get free training. There's a path for CCAs to become LPNs. And more seats have been added for RNs at universities across the province, and they've actually been given a job offer as soon as they graduate. Like everyone else, caregivers in these homes need to be able to take time off for vacation when they feel they need it, and to be able to have predictable work schedules. And one of the big areas where I think the government can help is by increasing the supply of CCAs, LPNs, and RNs to help with that. Our government wants to look beyond the hours of care that our loved ones receive to other things that matter, things like activity time. We want to ensure residents have things they can enjoy. And I think about things like bingo, like saying the rosary. I think there's some people here who say the rosary every day probably. And those things are important, and we want to make sure that residents have those important things that they should have in their everyday lives. I know how important a new nursing home is for Port Hawkesbury and what it means to people in Inverness County, the town of Port Hawkesbury, Richmond County, Guysborough, and Antigonish counties. There are people and their families who are waiting for rooms in this facility. It is not easy to leave one's home, yet any one of us may one day have to do that. My hope is that this new 96-room facility will make that transition easier, that it will wrap its arms around any new resident to welcome them to their new home, a home of laughter, a home of joy, a home of friendship, where life continues with purpose, with meaning, that shows all of us what the dignity of our loved ones is all about. So here's to the new Port Hawkesbury Nursing Home.
Here with us today to formally thank Minister McMaster is McLeod Care's CEO, Ramsey Duff.
It's a great day for Port Hawkesbury.
It really is.
Yeah. And we're here because of this man right here. Minister, we appreciate your leadership and support. You, the Premier, your government have shown unwavering commitment to the healthcare system. We today are bearing the fruit of that commitment. Minister, you deserve to be acknowledged along with the Premier and government for that commitment, for ensuring that care can be provided where it's needed, when it's needed, and by the people that can provide it. Thank you. Minister, single rooms, private baths, activities, programming, these are all critically important to the type of care that McLeod Cares is so committed to. We saw some of the negative things that could happen during COVID. We saw what buildings that are aged, shared rooms, shared baths, we saw the consequences of that. Again, this Premier, this Minister, this government set out to change that. The new building will have the things that allow us to cope better in providing the care during turbulent times like COVID. The new building will provide the programming and services that seniors deserve to have. The new building will allow for families, friends, and community to come together to celebrate as they should the things that the ministers pointed out are so important to everyday living. Minister, you're making something happen that all communities deserve to have, and we're grateful again for that. Thank you. McLeod Cares was founded over 40 years ago by Brian and Irene McLeod. Brian was born not far from here, just down the road in Cleveland, and it was his vision and passion that led to this home being built. Minister, it is that same commitment, that same passion that I commit to you with the team, with the staff who are here. We will put that same level of passion and commitment into the new building that you're granting us today. Ladies and gentlemen, your community has been given an exceptional opportunity. It's a once-in-a-generation chance to support the development of the social and economic fabric of your community. There will be hundreds of jobs created, construction and permanent employment in the new home. There will be tens of millions of dollars spent in construction. There will be tens of millions of dollars of biweekly payroll added to this community. Housing, services, supports. This is a generational opportunity to reinforce the social and economic fabric that is important to Port Hawkesbury. I urge you, work with your town councillors, work with your representatives, support this government. Port Hawkesbury can build a home to serve your community for the next generation.
Following Friday afternoon's announcement, reporters got the opportunity to ask questions individually to Minister Alan McMaster, McLeod Care's CEO Ramsey Duff, and municipal officials that were in attendance, including Port Hawkesbury Town Councillor Jason O'Coin and the Warden of Inverness County, Bonnie McIsaac. First up, we asked Alan McMaster what it meant for him to be able to make this announcement in Port Hawkesbury on this Friday afternoon in December.
This is something that I know people locally really want, and I'm just happy that our government is doing it. It's the home here. Part of it is modern, built about 10 years ago. Other parts of the home have been built a long time ago, built in a different day and age, built for a time when care was not as acute. Now, in many of our nursing homes, residents require more care, more space. Building standards have changed over the years. So when this new home is constructed, it's going to be great. It's going to be spacious, bright. It's going to have the space so that residents can be cared for by the caregivers that are working here. So I'm just really happy that it's happening.
Wow, it's absolutely fantastic. The town is growing. It's great to see the province investing into our seniors and into nursing homes. It's well overdue, and we have to give such credit to the province. This government is not slowing down, and it's absolutely great to see.
A lot of our residents are, from Inverness County, reside here, and this is great news for all the municipalities around in the town of Port Hawkesbury. Very exciting. We're super excited to hear 96 new beds, 96 bed facility coming to Port Hawkesbury. Great news.
Port Hawkesbury's got some wonderful growth demographics underway, and so applaud the government that they're looking out into the future about what demand's going to be in this community. So certainly it's a demand-driven decision that we're benefiting from today. But there is a particular concern around shared rooms, shared bathrooms, our experience during COVID around infection control, and so this announcement will allow us to address that over the longer term too. We will eliminate double beds and shared bathrooms. It will be all private. It's a pretty important progressive need in the system, generally around the safety and around the care and comfort that the seniors experience in nursing homes.
So I didn't know what the announcement was going to be, if it was just going to be new beds or a new facility, or you never know. So I was excited to find out today.
So how long will it take the new Port Hawkesbury Nursing Home to be built, and where exactly is it going to be? Here's how Minister Alan McMaster answered the question about the timeline.
Well, that's something we're still working on. It's still years away. It takes a while to build nursing homes. You have to do the design, you have to do the construction, and we're building a lot of nursing homes around the province right now. But I know that McLeod Cares is an experienced operator, and they have the experience and the capacity to do the job well. And I'm hopeful that it'll be happening sooner than later, and I'll certainly be working to see that it happens sooner than later.
So we have to work with government on timelines. It's obviously a process of design. We have to find that land. Typically these things take around 4 years from start to finish, so we've got a number of years ahead of us, and we'll be working with government on that.
What's most important is that the three of us can work together. It's not about what the town can benefit directly from. It's what our residents can benefit from. And we're going to work hand in hand with the McLeod Group, with the province, with all partners to see this through to the end and to get the best result for the community.
So we'll go through a process of identifying land parcels. It's certainly the objective to try to locate within the town. That's where the center of the population and the demand is in the future. But we'll have to work with council and with the private developers to understand what's available in terms of land parcels.
Well, it keeps people closer to home, of course, so that's the main thing. And now we have a new facility being planned in Shetty Camp and one in Port Hawkesbury. Inverness received one a few years ago, before my time, but it's great news all around. More seniors closer to home, so we're excited about that.
Demographics are driving the decisions. These announcements that are being made are being driven by demographic demand. The seniors' growth, the care needs in all of our communities across the province are driving these announcements, and we're fortunate that the government has the foresight to see the demand that this community is going to need.
In the end, the announcement on the first afternoon of December had as much to do about the future of the Port Hawkesbury Nursing Home as it did with the facility's history and its tradition of providing quality care to those in the Strait area.
We've all seen it. Our loved ones have had to go elsewhere to get this care, and to be able to stay in a community where they've lived their whole lives, to have their family close by, to have the grandchildren around. It's just so good for the community, great for the residents, good for the staff, and it's going to be a second to none world-class building coming here to this area, just to go ahead with the rest of the development, which is great.
The great gift of being able to provide nursing care in small communities is that more often than not, the care staff know the residents. They were their teachers. They were the folks who they grew up with down the street. And it's that intimacy of the relationship, the friendship, the connections with family that leads to the higher quality care outcomes that we experience in homes like Port Hawkesbury.
And now it's time for our feature interview here on Telile 24/7. This week we're talking to Trevor Boudreau. The MLA for Richmond entered the fall legislature session in Halifax with some added duties as a member of Tim Houston's provincial cabinet. Boudreau is now the Minister responsible for Ill-New Affairs and the Minister of Community Services for Nova Scotia. The second portfolio took on added significance this fall as affordability and inflation issues continued to cause problems for many Nova Scotians and as the long-time problem of homelessness became more visible, particularly in the city of Halifax. So how is Trevor Boudreau handling all of these things as the Minister of Community Services and as the MLA for Richmond? Let's find out with this interview. And we're pleased to welcome back to Telile 24/7 the MLA for Richmond, and as of this fall's legislature sitting, the Minister responsible for Community Services and the Minister responsible for Ill-New Affairs for Nova Scotia. He is Trevor Boudreau. Minister Boudreau, thank you for joining me on Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you for having me, Adam. It's always a pleasure.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. We have a lot to talk about. First of all, let's look back at the recently completed fall legislature sitting. It was your first as a cabinet minister, but inside and outside of that, how would you describe the proceedings over the last couple of months? What was this legislature session like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously a little bit different for me coming in as a new minister. So in my previous role, I was the whip for the government, and so my job was quite different than it was as a minister. And so, in that role, you're certainly constantly, dealing with the kind of the ongoings of the legislature. In this capacity, it's more about, and in my position specifically, only having maybe 2.5 or 3 weeks to get ready. It was basically getting a handle on kind of the details of my portfolio so that opposition parties have an opportunity to ask questions in question period or, in media scrums, having conversations with media about, what's going on top of, having that role as a minister. So, constantly working with staff and dealing with day-to-day issues in the department, and then several announcements that we made during that time. So it was a little bit of a roller coaster, to be honest, and trying to get a feel for it. I felt like my brain capacity was pretty full, but certainly a very rewarding and very honored experience. Right, I'm very very privileged to be able to be in that role and to be a cabinet minister. So I take that very seriously.
And we're going to talk about a couple of the announcements you mentioned in just a few moments' time. First of all, I wanted to ask you about the role of Community Services Minister. This is coming at a time when we're seeing more visual impact of the difficulty being faced by many Nova Scotians. We already knew there was a housing crisis in the province. We're seeing more images on our nightly newscasts of tents being set up for homeless people around Halifax, right in Grand Parade. We've known that has been an issue, not just in HRM, but also right here in your riding and also in different parts of Nova Scotia. What has it been like for you trying to navigate these difficult waters and to be able to try to come up with solutions with your department for the issues that have arisen, not just in the past few months, but over the past few years?
Yeah, I know it's no secret that cost of living and affordability are impacting, Nova Scotians, are impacting Canadians and people across the globe. And I think you're recognizing that one of those challenges is affordability of housing. And so you're seeing an increased number of people experiencing homelessness. And I would say, it looks different maybe here in a rural setting versus in HRM, where you're seeing, an increase in number of encampments and tents. And I would say, sometimes it's a challenge to fully grasp what's going on. But as a department, we have I say troops on the ground, but we have people working really hard to kind of identify that. We're working very closely with service providers and municipalities like HRM and CBRM to have conversations about what's going on the ground. What I can tell you, Adam, is, there's what's called a by name list in Halifax, and that's what tracks kind of homelessness in HRM. And as of last week, there were 1,051 people on that list. Now, that does not mean 1,051 people are experiencing homelessness, living rough in a tent. We basically have an understanding there's about 200 people living in tents or have been living in tents over the last number of months. And I think we'll talk a bit about some of the solutions we've had as a government and as a department. So we did open a shelter in Dartmouth on Windmill Road that opened initially with 50 beds, and I'm happy to say today we're expanding that. That was always the intention, to expand up to 100. I believe we have 80 beds now, and we'll gear up to that 100, with also capacity in that shelter and also in Beacon House in Sackville to, when there's an emergency like snow that's happening yesterday and today, we expand those shelters to take people in who are experiencing living rough and intense. So we know there's a lot to do, and I will say this has been a very acute issue for me, and by that I mean it's here and now, right? It's not something we're looking at, not just looking at long-term solutions, although we are looking at that, but it also is dealing with the here and now. So I feel it. I feel the weight of that every day. And I'm very fortunate to work with the people I do trying to solve this problem. But this isn't a problem that the province or the Department of Community Services will solve on their own. We need our partners, and we're very grateful for the work that individuals are playing, that organizations are playing, and certainly service providers and municipal units. So.
Well, I want to pick up on the idea of partnerships, Minister Boudreau, and one of the reasons I do that is because we obviously know that homelessness and tough economic times look different in different areas. We may be seeing tents on Grand Parade in Halifax and in Dartmouth, but by the same token, you see couch surfing happening. You see people living in trailers or people living in the woods. So it's difficult all the way around, even if it's not immediately visible. It all seems to come back to affordable housing and to having an affordable buyer's market for homes and rental market for renters. How much work do you and your Department of Community Services do with the Department of Municipal Affairs and Housing to try to solve that aspect of the problem, which really seems to be taking prominence even day to day in the legislature? Basically, what are your two departments doing to help deal with the housing issue?
Yeah, so I think I'll kind of start by talking about kind of the continuum of housing, and in part that is kind of where our two departments kind of work together. So if I wish I had the graphic that I have with the department that shows that continuum of housing, and it starts with homelessness and shelters and moves into transitional housing and supportive housing into affordable housing, and then getting to the point where people own their own home. And my department certainly works a lot with that homelessness side, that supportive housing side. And what that entails is not just about providing somebody with a home or a place to stay, but oftentimes they need those extra supports. So that could be mental health and addiction supports. It could be employment supports. It could be a number of different supports. And our department wraps around certainly and supports people with that. Affordable housing has been something that's probably been on the minds of people across this country for the last number of years. I will say over the last 30 years, provinces haven't done a good job of building affordable housing. We've kind of left it to other organizations. I'm very proud of our government for announcing for the first time in 30 years a significant increase in affordable housing units. I think it's 222 units to help almost 500 individuals, but we know there's more to do, right? Affordable housing isn't just something that we're going to be working on as a government, but you're also getting a sense from the federal government and their announcements that this is a priority for them, and municipalities are taking a role as well. But I would say, in terms of what my department and Minister Lore's department do together, we work very closely hand in hand. And I'll give you an example of just one initiative that has been very successful here in Nova Scotia, that other provinces are looking at, and that's called the Community Housing Acquisition Program. And what that program does is it allows for nonprofits and cooperatives to get a loan from the provincial government. And that loan can be used to acquire multi-unit or multi-residential unit buildings. And so over the last 2 years, our government has actually purchased 15 buildings, creating 147 units. And those units that I'm talking about are part of what we do with supportive housing, and that we wrap around services to those individuals to support them to get the skills of the training they need to thrive and grow. Certainly there's more work to do, but certainly as departments, we work closely, our staffs work closely. I sit next to the minister in the legislature. We chat regularly about ideas. both that our staffs come up with, but that we see working in other jurisdictions as well. So we're constantly looking for it, and I do think other jurisdictions are looking at what we're doing as a province in terms of the emergency supports, the shelter supports, the supportive housing, and are looking at what we're doing and what we're trying to do as a model of what governments can do to help.
Just quickly before we leave the housing issue, Trevor, I note that there has been some activity on this front closer to home. The Strait Area Chamber of Commerce, most notably, has set up a not-for-profit housing cooperative. They're working with local municipalities on that. And we're seeing some movement toward housing that was unveiled back in the spring by Collindale Business Solutions and Damien McInnes regarding housing that could be helping with students at Nova Scotia Community College. Are local efforts and local campaigns landing on your radar as a minister? I mean, housing isn't specifically in your purview, but are you hearing about this both as a minister and both as an MLA for the Strait area?
I absolutely am, Adam, and very fortunate that these groups are stepping up. Like I said earlier, this is exactly what we need to kind of support that challenge that we have right now with more housing, and really pleased that municipalities and the Chamber of Commerce are stepping up, along with some other organizations are involved with that too. And I've been very active in keeping a close eye on what's going on there and having conversations with all of those members. And we have a few irons in the fire that I'm helping with there. And but I would say I had a conversation with Damien McInnes fairly recently just about kind of some of his ideas as well. And look, there's no bad ideas at this point. I'm a very motivated minister right now, I would say, to try and help with that housing crisis, because increase in housing is going to absolutely help me with supporting people who are experiencing homelessness. And so to that effect, I encourage any organizations in the area that are considering supports. And I had conversations recently with the administration at the town of Port Hawkesbury, just talking about some of the ideas I have about that, because some of the challenges in rural areas is you don't necessarily have what I would call service providers that have that expertise of dealing with homelessness. And so what I really think is there's an opportunity to build some capacity here, both with that organization that's being developed, but also within our other organizations. So I'm really trying to wrap my head around how do we develop that capacity here in the Strait area and in other rural areas across the province, so that when we do put a call out as community services and say, hey, is there any vacant buildings that we could utilize? But we need those wraparound services to support that as well. So again, those are things that are on my radar. They're active, and certainly will continue to pursue.
Now, as we're having this conversation, I know that this is part of municipal affairs and housing, and it all connects to homelessness and some of the things in the purview of community services. I want to steer things back to your own department specifically, because you'd mentioned there'd been a couple of announcements that your department has made in recent times. I want to pick up on one of them, and that involves providing extra funding to an initiative that helps people deal with disabilities. Another $300 is going to be available to people involved here starting this coming April. Can you tell us a bit about that and why your department felt this was the right thing to do?
Yeah, so there's kind of two parts to this, Adam. As some people will know, there was a human rights tribunal case with the province of Nova Scotia that basically said people with disabilities in Nova Scotia were discriminated against, and so there has been we call it the remedy, and that remedy outlines kind of steps that we have to take over the next 5 years as a province to get in line to remove those barriers for people with disabilities. And generally speaking, that remedy is with respect to people who are on the disability support program. But we also have people who are living with disabilities in this province who aren't on that disability support program. Some of them are on income assistance, and so what we've created here is a disability stream for people on income assistance. So just to give you context, Adam, $53.3 million invested in this program, and it's going to support roughly 63% of people on income assistance. So that means roughly 15,000 people on income assistance have a disability. And we're providing that extra $300 a month to individuals who have a disability who aren't covered under that disability support program, to support them in the increased barriers that people with disabilities would have. So again, it's a great news story about, again, supporting. It's not necessarily part of the remedy, and because it wasn't mandated by the remedy, but we felt this was absolutely the right thing to do to support people with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Just want to ask about this as well, Trevor, coming into this as the Minister of Community Services, and the development of the remedy for those that feel they have been discriminated against because of disability. Does any of this surprise you in this day and age? I mean, we're at a point now where we have a 2030 deadline for all government buildings to be made accessible in every way possible. We're seeing steps being taken by the municipality of Richmond County in particular. But I just wonder, does any of this surprise you that your department had to step in and make these kinds of changes and these kinds of upgrades to be able to help those who struggle with disabilities?
What I would say, Adam, is our Department of Community Services has always had that belief that people with disabilities should live in the communities of their choice and have the opportunities that everybody else has. As things were developed over the years, they didn't necessarily align with that, and this case comes from a number of years back, over probably a decade, and so a lot of what had been going on. There have been changes already in the disability supports program. So we've been moving towards flexible funding, or funding for individuals, or moving away from congregate settings with large numbers of people in living with disabilities in under one roof. And so as a government, as a department, we've been moving towards kind of these things anyway. But what the remedy has very directly outlined are, here are the steps that need to happen. And these are good steps. These are good things. They need to happen. And sometimes, a decision like this gives us an opportunity to really correct some of those things that haven't necessarily been done in the past. And we're looking forward. And we've been working really hard with the Disabilities Rights Coalition. We had a kickoff in early November, a conference that was extremely well attended by people with disabilities, by their families, by community organizations, and we need to move forward on this. And so we're very dedicated and focused on providing what needs to be provided. So I'm, my staff is very eager and motivated, and this is, part of that announcement was the disability stream, but the other part of it was talking about kind of 3 other things we're doing right away to kind of get moving on that remedy. So it needs to be done.
All right, well, we'll hope for the best there. And just as we're winding down here, Minister Boudreau, we are headlong into the holiday season. And of course, we're wrapping up 2023, getting ready for 2024. Any hopes or priorities for you, not necessarily as the minister or as the Richmond MLA, but just as a member of the government caucus heading into the new year?
Look, what I would say, Adam, is I'm very fortunate to have a very Richmond County has treated me very fairly over the last 2.5 years, and I get a lot of input from individuals, organizations. I've met with the Seniors Club, the Seniors Takes Action Coalition recently. I have conversations regularly with my municipal counterparts, constantly trying to get a sense of priorities for this area. So as an MLA, you're constantly, I wouldn't say fighting, but negotiating for your area and issues with relations to roads or healthcare or, education for that matter. But what I would say is I'm really looking forward to really diving in deep in this portfolio. It's a heavy portfolio. I won't lie. Like these are heavy conversations I'm having every day. I feel it in my heart, the heaviness. But I have a really good staff that is working tirelessly to make sure that I'm up to speed and understand it. And every day I feel a bit more comfortable in this position. And certainly my goal is to represent the area well, but also support all Nova Scotians that would touch in the Department of Community Services or all new affairs. And I would say it's a rewarding challenge, probably one of the most difficult challenges I've ever had. And but that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm looking forward to the challenge, as difficult as it can be, and certainly building those partnerships to see where we can go on all these files. So those are my goals, is as broad as those could be.
Well, we know in the middle of all these challenges that yours is a very busy workload. We appreciate you giving us some time here for Telile 24/7 once again. And Trevor Boudreau, we wish you all the best for the holiday season. And I imagine your daughter Kate is going to be busy with Kate's Bistro as the Christmas baking season really kicks in. So we wish her and all the family well as well too.
Yeah, and Luke's been performing a little bit with his fiddle and piano too. So there's my children probably keep us a little bit busy, a little bit busier lately than maybe in the past. But anytime we can be together as a family is a good time.
All right. Well, we wish you all the best in that. And thank you once again for joining me here for Telile 24/7 today.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me.
Trevor Boudreau is the MLA for Richmond and also Nova Scotia's Minister of Community Services and Minister responsible for ILNU affairs. We've been speaking to him today by Zoom. And there you have it. That wraps up this week's edition of Telile 24/7. Thank you for tuning in, and a special thank you to my interview guests this week, Trevor Boudreau, Alan McMaster, Ramsey Duff, Jason O'Coin, and Bonnie McIsaac. If you have any thoughts about what you've seen this week on Telile 24/7, or some suggestions for future editions of the show, I'd love to hear them. You can contact me directly. My phone number is 902-625-8863, and you can reach me by email using the address adamjrcook, cook with an E, @gmail.com. You can also contact Telile Community Television directly with your comments and suggestions. The station phone number in Arichat is 902-226-1928, and the best email address to use is telile@telile.tv. As always, you can follow Telile on social media. We're on X, formerly known as Twitter, as well as Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. Telile's YouTube channel features every single episode of Telile 24/7, including this one, as well as individual segments and interviews from our programs. We offer the same service for our sister show, Roundtable, and our YouTube channel features several brand new episodes of French language journalism, courtesy of the newest member of the Telile News team, Jacqueline Giroir. For now, I'm Adam Cook. Thank you once again for joining me for this week's edition of Telile 24/7. I look forward to seeing you again next week with a brand new show. Bye for now.